EA podcast. I am Jason, and with me, as usual, is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, what's up?
Not a whole lot. Some good episodes again of The Last Dance, episodes 7 and 8 that we are recapping here. Um, Episode 7 focusing a lot on Michael Jordan, the passing of his father, his initial retirement, and going into baseball, as well as, of course, and then the '94 season with the Bulls without Jordan and Scottie Pippen in the spotlight. Episode 8 focusing a bit on Michael as a challenging teammate, coming back in 1995. And of course, the greatest team of all time, 72-10, 96 Bulls, going and winning the championship for Michael's fourth time in his career.
Yeah. I thought two really cool episodes. I liked both episodes a lot, and leaving us on a cliffhanger again. I like how The Last Dance has
right
cliffhanger, edge of your seat. Oh man,
yes. Can Michael Jordan beat Reggie Miller? That's
Chris Mullen's bald this time, so I don't know. It's gonna be tricky.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tough. They're all. I hope they address how weird it was that the whole team was bald. It's so weird and so creepy.
Yes.
I normally, I like the Pacers in those days, but I remember that year I was just like, man, I really hope they beat this creepy ball team. They're really scary and really weird, but I like it. I like the idea that there probably is somebody out there. I mean, nobody that's listening to us, but I hope that there's somebody out there that it is like earnestly being like, "Oh man, what happens next in this story?" Is there somebody? There's got to be somebody. I can't. Maybe not. It's ESPN, but there's got to be somebody out there that's just like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna happen next." Like,
yeah.
Is Jordan going to do it? Are they going to win? Like, I don't know.
Doesn't know anything. Doesn't know to look at Wikipedia or Basketball Reference. Just like,
there's got to be there's not many, but there's got to be a person out there. Maybe like a child, maybe some 8-year-old or something that's like, Dad, does Jordan do it? And then the dad just doesn't want to tell him or something. Yeah, maybe it's that.
You'll find out next week, buddy.
Right? Yeah. Tune in next week. Like, this is what we used to have to do as kids. We had to tune in next week to find out what was going to happen. So this is what you're going to have to do now. Yeah, that's good.
Yes. So Episode 7 kicks off 1998. Craig Sager of TNT asked Jerry Cross during a press conference, "Are you surprised the team has stayed together and the chemistry has been that good with all the backstabbing between you and Coach?"
Craig Sager.
Right.
Pew pew. Yeah, shooting over there backstage.
Not like that question. No, because there has not been backstabbing, and he storms off. And then someone says, "Way to go, Craig," sort of sarcastically after Cross does that. So that was pretty funny. You don't see. I mean, fairly accurate. I feel like Phil Jackson has sort of been let off easy for kind of his role in all this. Maybe they will address it in more detail next week, since I'm imagining they're going to be focusing, obviously, pretty much exclusively on 97 and 98, since we're that point in the recounting of the past.
Yeah.
So that'll be definitely a place where it will fit more. But yeah, that his role in all of this was pretty major, and he definitely did a lot to kind of stir the pot throughout the 90s. We've talked about before how Reinsdorf also, the fact that Kraus wasn't really doing, most of these things in a vacuum, and that, Jerry Reinsdorf, of course, is the man that he's ultimately working for, and the man who ultimately does not want to pay all these big salaries. So Kraus having to sort of take that, take the bullet for him in a lot of cases.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the Phil Jackson thing. I have noticed so far, it's just kind of been like Phil's like, "Hey, I'm just trying to do my job here and be quiet." And as anybody who knows anything about Phil Jackson knows that, not really. I mean, at any stop he's been at, he's ruffled a lot of feathers, and he does so in a very like calming way, but he's a man who knows his own value and understands his value and wants to be paid that value, wants to be given certain things when he comes in. And that's been something that happened in the Lakers. It happened when he took over the Knicks as president or whatnot. So, he's so far been kind of painted as just like the guy that was, the coach that just wanted to go there and everything be happy-go-lucky and win some titles and stuff. But he definitely had, he wasn't innocent in this entire thing.
Sure.
Well. He definitely stoked the flames for sure.
Yeah, a lot of egos there, obviously, and his was an important part of that, and hopefully they get into that a little bit.
Yeah, and he knew. I mean, he knew that the second he knew his worth and knew that, hey, look, if you guys let me go, I got 30 teams that are going to call me right now and give me a lot more money than you guys are giving me, because they're all going to be bidding against themselves and stuff. So like he knew what he was was doing, and he knew his self-worth, and yeah, you should. Like, I'm not faulting him for that whatsoever.
No.
But yeah, it's like, yeah, he has been sort of painted as being an innocent figure this entire thing, and that's not entirely accurate.
Sure. So the 98, we focus really on the net series, which of course is it's a little bit harder than expected when, game one and game two are very close. The Bulls win game one in overtime. But then game three, we have a big, Scott Burrell has a big game there, and the Bulls end up, winning easily in New Jersey to sweep the series. The other focus of 98 really is about Jordan's relationship with his teammates. We kind of get, for the first time, some of his teammates going on the record about how difficult Jordan was to be as a teammate. Kukoc describes him as, everyone kind of had to be on alert with Jordan, especially after a bad game. We see some examples of Burrell being kind of Jordan's whipping boy. Jordan's quote is, "I try to get him to fight me sometimes, in a good way." And then, we see a lot of footage of Jordan, using some colorful language, calling Scott Burrell ho. The stuff that we see, I don't think we see anything that I would regard as, going over the line. We see Jordan kind of being, challenging personality, but most of it's just kind of, standard trash talk that you would expect.
Right.
Nothing that seems like, abusive or cruel or anything like that. Although we know Jordan was certainly capable of, at least going to the edge of that. Bushler said, hey, we were his teammates. We were afraid of him. Purdue said, yeah, he crossed the line many times. I feel like the Bulls sound a little bit like a battered spouse. Like, yeah, he was, but it was good for us. We won championships, which, of course, may very well be true.
Right. No, that exact moment where you put the note there where they sounded a bit like a battered spouse. I was watching, with my wife, and she was just kind of like, hey, what's that thing where, like, you get abused a bunch, but then you think it's okay? And I was like, Stockholm Syndrome? And she's like, yes.
Right.
And then she just went back to, like, scrolling on her phone. Like, just to say, I think all these men have Stockholm Syndrome. Like, the best, I thought the one where you saw a little bit of a break was BJ Armstrong.
Yeah.
Where he goes, was he a nice guy? And then he makes this face that's like, no, he was awful. And then he was like, he couldn't have been nice, in a way that, like, but there was enough, he said enough with the face that he made after the was he a nice guy thing to say, absolutely not a nice guy. But, know, and then it was all kind of met with, no, he was awful, but that's what we needed. Or no, he was awful, but we won titles. So it's like you said, it's, and I get in athletics, that's always that sort of aspect as well. I get that. A lot of people have coaches or fellow players that they play with that are maybe this way, and they respect them in some ways. But yeah, you can tell for some people it was a little much, but Judd Bushel were afraid of him. I don't know if you should necessarily be afraid of your teammate, but
Yeah. No, I mean, and it may be true. I mean, it may be true that Jordan, being that way, may have, the Bulls may have had given them more success than they otherwise would have had if Jordan had been a little bit more chill. I don't know. I mean, Jordan certainly seems to think that that's true.
Sure.
So, hey, winning as a price, leadership as a price. That's what it was. It's what I had to do in order to be as good as I could be, and my team be as good as they could be. And hey, I very well could be true. So I don't know if we get a little bit of the I'm going to put quote marks around ugly side of Jordan, but the part of Jordan that he definitely didn't want you to see in this documentary is at least showing you glimpses of is here.
Yeah, for sure. No, and this is why I really like these episodes as well. Is we got a little bit of that breakdown. We got a little bit of what I think people have been sort of looking for is footage from the practices, footage, not in the games, footages of sort of before and after games, footages of and that sort of stuff, particularly at Scott Burrell. And then also I thought quickly cutting to every one of the teammates, kind of saying largely the same thing in some different words, essentially that, we were afraid of him. He wasn't a nice guy. And then, adding the qualifier of, but that maybe we needed that, or yeah, we won and all that sort of stuff. But no, I thought it was cool to kind of, like you said, it wasn't really necessarily the quote unquote bad side, but at least it was a little bit for the viewer at home to know, hey, look, this guy, there was a nasty side to him in some ways. So there was a side that maybe didn't always, see eye to eye with his teammates, or wasn't always the best friend to his teammates or whatnot. So,
So then we go back to 1993. Jordan says here that he knew in the game 6 of the win over the Suns to win the third championship that was going to be the end for him. He was planning to retire at that point, at least was seriously thinking about it, and only his dad was aware of that at that time. They go a little bit into Jordan's relationship with his father. A lot of people talk about how they were, always together, and he was more like a friend than a dad, and so on. And then we get, the basic details of, of James Jordan going missing, and eventually, his car being found, and then his body being found. It was fairly common for him to go off and kind of go off on his own and travel or do things or whatever, but he would, maintain content with, with his wife and with the family. And then it's interesting. I think the thing that I thought was most interesting about this is Jordan, pretty immediately saying that, like, I want to focus on the positive here. It's like, I want to turn a negative into his positive. And his mom also very much had that mentality. And that was sort of what helped him get through it. It's hard for me to imagine in that situation. And, as and I'm probably talked to some of the listeners about it at some point, I lost my dad when he was in his early 50s, and I was, close to Jordan's age at the same point. And in that it's really hard to focus on a positive there, even if you have another outlet to do something like, Jordan would eventually decide to do with playing baseball and, summoning the challenge there and, fulfilling his father's dream in a way with that. But I just, that was sort of an interesting look into, I guess, the mindset of Jordan to a degree that in a way I hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I thought the way that they did this, and I thought it was a nice, way to go from like, hey, here's this guy who was really mean to all his teammates, who was kind of an asshole, into, here's what sort of motivated him, and here's, the relationship with his father, and here's, the tragedy of his father's death, and how the way that people were covering it, the way that people kind of questioned his involvement in it, and you see absolutely why, like, you would just want to get as far away from this as humanly possible when that all comes, crashing down. I think this documentary's done a good job of because, in prior times where you've kind of heard this story, you kind of feel like it was, hey, that murder happened, and then Jordan just decided I need to get away. This sort of, I think, does a better job of painting the tale that, even by 92 and all the way through 93, you could see it's just wearing on him. It's just absolutely wearing on this guy. The gambling stuff comes up. All this sort of questions are coming up. Now his father's dead. Now more people are asking, hey, is the gambling related to your father's death? And all this sort of stuff. So you absolutely get then why this guy would make this, like, just insanely rash decision to say, you know what? Fuck it. I'm done playing basketball. I'm going to play baseball. You see it a little bit more, and they've done a good job of maybe rationalizing it a little bit more and not making it seem like it was just this, fly-by-night, off-the-wall, harebrained idea that he had, overnight to do.
Yeah. And, he had told, Mark Venzel in 1992, before the Dream Team that, yeah, he had planned to, wanted to retire and wanted to go play baseball, was something that he was seriously thinking about. And part of the reason he stayed in 93 is because he wanted a three-peat since Magic and Bird hadn't done that. And he wanted to, he was still obviously seen in a similar light with them. And, they go into, David Falk telling Reinsdorf that Michael wants to retire. Reinsdorf says that he wants Jordan to talk to Phil. And he tells Phil, like, I have no more challenges. I have no more motivation. I just don't want to do this. And then, and I forgot about this, but, Jordan attends a White Sox playoff game in 93 against the Blue Jays in Chicago. Reinsdorf, of course, owns the White Sox. And, during that game, the news breaks that Jordan is going to retire the next day. There's there's live media coverage. They show, the crazy scene at the press conference the next day. Tom Brokaw's there live, calls him at that point the greatest basketball player who ever lived, which is sort of interesting that even that Jordan was thought of that way, even in, I mean, not a huge surprise he was thought of that way in 93, but, in 93, I think he's closer to, the, Bird and Magic and Russell and, those guys, plus, obviously Kareem had a lot more longevity. I think the conversation around Jordan in 98 makes more sense to me than it being that way in 93, but obviously he had accomplished a lot by 93 as well.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And, at the press conference, Jordan doesn't completely close the door on coming back someday. In fact, he views that as a possible future challenge. And nothing yet about baseball. The idea that he would come back to baseball hadn't been wasn't discussed there. It hadn't broken his desire to do that. But fairly quickly, obviously he ends up, we go into kind of the particulars of the going into baseball story, which I think we've heard a lot before. I don't think a lot new there. The one thing that I thought was interesting is that he went to Double-A instead of Single-A because the press facilities weren't able to handle him in Single-A, but at Double-A they had a little bit better one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And and then they get into the fact that he felt very betrayed by the Sports Illustrated cover and story that was called, that the headline was "Baggett Michael" after he was really struggling in baseball, and then he never talked to Sports Illustrated again, and that the thing that he said he was offended most by was the fact that the writer didn't actually interview him for the story, didn't even try to get his point of view during the story. So
yeah, I do enjoy that I do like that they kind of they didn't do too much into the baseball story, because I think they understand that most people know the story of the baseball thing, and if you don't, there's an entire 30 for 30 about that. I was a little worried that we were going to spend half an episode on that or whatever, and it was they did just enough to kind of tell you, hey, here's this diversion he made, and then okay, we're done, we're going right back to basketball. And I enjoyed that because it's the story that's been told a lot. There's not a whole lot else to tell, and unless they have any new information, why bother working on it or talking even more about it. So I was fine with a little bit that they put in there, showed a little bit of the footage, talked about how he struggled, and then basically gets right into, okay, look, this guy wants to go back and play basketball. This baseball thing's fun for a little bit, but it's time to get back to basketball. So I like that they were a little quick with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the rest of the episode focuses on 94. Of course, the Bulls without Jordan for the first time. Pippen has a great season. They have kind of a mix of the new and the old. They still have Horace Grant. They still have B.J. Armstrong. It's Kukoc's first year and Steve Kerr's first year. Pete Myers is a big part of that team, kind of a forgotten Bull there. But definitely, obviously, a team kind of in transition between the two. I think it was Kerr who had a funny quote, or maybe it was Pippen. I forget what. One of them said, what was it like that year? And then basically said, yeah, they had nobody yelling at them, so the team was a little bit looser, had more fun.
It was Pippen, actually, which was
that's right.
He's like, well, no one was yelling at him, and everybody was getting the ball, and everybody was kind of feeling happy. It was like, hey, I get the ball. If I move, if I miss, I don't get yelled at. When practice is over, it's fine. So yeah, it's a fun year, and I'm glad that they spotlighted that year a little bit and talked about just how good that team was. I know you couldn't spend too much time on that 94 team, but it's a really, really cool team. Like, it's one of my favorite teams in NBA history to talk about, because it's like they lost, the best player of all time, one of the best players of all time. And they, I don't want to say they didn't skip, and miss a beat or whatever. They obviously missed a few beats here and there, but we're a pretty damn good team with Scottie Pippen at the point, at the peak of his powers, Tony Kukoc coming in and immediately contributing, Horace Grant now entering his prime, B.J. Armstrong was still solid at that time, Steve Kerr, who had been a good scorer on other teams, comes to the team. So yeah, there was a lot of really good talent on that team. So it was cool that they, didn't just gloss over that year and did talk a little bit about how important that year was in the growth of a lot of those players and the growth in just the Bulls team in general, and Phil Jackson too, about Phil Jackson's great coaching and being able to really run the triangle to the way that he really wanted to on that year as well.
Yeah. And, definitely fun team, and then, a few clips, but mostly focus on, Eastern Conference semifinals against the Knicks. Game 3, Patrick Ewing hits a shot that gives the Knicks the lead. Bulls call timeout. Phil Jackson calls a play for Kukoc to get the last shot, and they make a big deal about how Kukoc had like 3 or 4 game winners already that season, so he was kind of used to get. He'd had he hit some big shots. It wasn't like it was alien him to get those shots, but Pippen felt like disrespected and angry at that moment, feeling like he should be the guy who gets the ball, that felt insulted by Phil and refuses to go into the game. You and I have talked about this on the show before, of course, and then Kukoc ends up hitting the game winner anyway. And then there's, in the locker room, even though the Bulls have just won and are back in the series down 2-1, everyone's really obviously upset about what happened and feel like Pippen let them down. Bill Cartwright, makes an emotional speech. And you see actually Cartwright sitting next to Pippen on the bench, after he refuses to go in and talking to him. Cartwright by then was, he was on the team still, but, I think he was 36 and, didn't really play very much at that point anymore, was obviously more of a locker room leader. But Cartwright cries and then Pippen cries and admits to making a mistake. And the team, obviously recovers okay. Pippen has some great games and has that dunk on Ewing in Game 6, but the Knicks are a better team and end up winning in Game 7. Jordan relays a story of calling Phil Jackson and said, "Yeah, I don't know if he's ever going to live this down. The having done this, and obviously it's something that did hurt Pippen's reputation a lot, although." Obviously, the team rebounded fine on that. I don't know. Anything more you have to say on that?
Not really. Yeah, I was unfortunately they cut out the clip, or I don't know if they really zoomed in on the clip all that much. My favorite thing about the Pippen, sitting in the '94 playoffs and not trying to get in the game is they showed Bill Cartwright sitting next to him. They showed a few other guys talking to him. They showed Phil Jackson being like super pissed off, like the shot goes in and everyone's like yay, and Phil just looks like he wants to die. He just hates it. My favorite thing that happens in that entire sequence though is when they're making the huddle, Scott Williams, who I think just tried to talk to Scottie Pippen and apparently got told, get the fuck out of here. No, I'm not going to listen to you. You see Scott Williams, they cut it right before you see it. He walks up, past the huddle and just kind of rolls his eyes and like, he's talking to somebody. I forget who it is, but he's just kind of rolling his eyes. So it's like, that's where I maybe got the idea that maybe this wasn't the first time this year that Scottie had did something that, made the entire team go like, here we go again. There's, Scottie doing Scottie things again. But just a really crazy moment that like, can you imagine that moment happening in like 2020 with like a player, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's such a huge deal that it happened even then, but like, even in this environment, in this social media age, in the age where people just hyper focus on every little thing, like, can you even fathom like a team star player just not wanting to go in because the play wasn't drawn up for him? I mean,
it was pretty hard, yeah.
I mean, it would just be ridiculous. If Kyrie Irving does that, like, we are never not talking about that every single time we talk about Kyrie Irving. But it is a testament, I guess, that Scottie was able to kind of let that go. And yeah, what you hear there, which is pretty cool, that he pretty much immediately realized that was a pretty terrible decision that I made. And I do wonder if the shot didn't go in, if he what would have happened in that situation too, because it was easy to kind of forget, whatever, who cares? Tony made it, we're moving on. Like, whereas had he not made it, maybe there'd be a little bit more eyeballs on it.
Yeah. Yes. So, episode 8, 98. We get through the Bulls Hornets playoff series. BJ Armstrong at this point is on the Hornets. Bulls win Game 1 very easily here. But BJ actually has a big Game 2 for the Hornets, including, beating Jordan on a drive and hitting a big jumper toward the end of the game, which gave, the Hornets basically an insurmountable lead. And, BJ admits to letting everyone know, on letting, Jordan know, letting Phil know, letting Scottie know, like, hey, I hit this big one. He obviously was upset about, I don't know, did he get traded? Did he get let go? I don't know. I forget.
So BJ was expansion draft, right?
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, which would give you I would be pretty pissed too if I got
Sure.
You know what, go to the Raptors or whatever. I think he was expansion draft and then didn't want to report to the Raptors like many people did at the time. I think we talked about it in our We the North episode that like
that's right. Yeah.
There was quite a few players that were told, hey, you're going to the Raptors, and they said, no, I am not. I will not be playing for the Toronto Raptors. Actually,
I will not.
Vancouver, don't know where that's at. Nope, not going.
Nope,
so
nope,
that's
not
going. Happening.
So. No, yeah. So, Jordan's quote is, "Oh yeah, BJ should have known better." And then we get 1996 footage. Among the best thing that we have here, we've got Michael Jordan sitting at his locker. He's swinging a baseball bat. He has a cigar, unlit,
but slightly lit though. Like lit previously. There's ash on it. It's a very weird. It's a very weird.
Right.
I was staring there. So there's like a coffee cup and there's a cigar in there. And then there's another cigar that he's holding that has ash, but it's clearly not lit.
Right. He has I think he has it in his mouth at some point, but I don't think it's ever lit, on camera.
Very strange, yeah.
Yes.
He's very not mad in the scene at all.
Yeah, right. Yes, he's explaining how much he is not mad, as you explain right. When you are not mad about something.
Yeah. No, I'm totally not mad. Look how not mad I am, everybody. I'm not mad.
But he does say, that he's gonna bust BJ's ass, and that he's gonna, that they should not have messed with us type thing. But he's definitely not mad about it. But yeah, I mean, basically, Jordan it's another example of Jordan, looking for a reason to, get his competitive juices flowing and, and kick somebody's ass. Not in this case, it was pretty easy to find the reason, but, and that sort of segues into the LaBradford Smith story, which I had completely forgotten about.
Yeah, who knew we were going to get a LaBradford Smith? I walk out of the room and I come back in and they're like, LaBradford Smith. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I've never thought of LaBradford Smith in quite a while. This is what a pull this was. Just a great, there's so many Michael Jordan revenge games, but everybody knows about all those. Everybody's always seen all those. It's all players we know about. I love the pull here to grab a LaBradford Smith pull, because that's, again, I think that shows this, the psychotic nature of Michael Jordan, is that this guy would, score on him and it would just drive Jordan fucking up the wall. And anybody that did anything to Jordan would drive him up a wall. He used that as motivation. But just knowing that it was nobody named LaBradford Smith, but that night Michael Jordan was just like, fuck that guy. And the next night that he was playing him was like, I'm going to do everything I can to make that guy's life miserable. So pretty cool. Kind of.
Right. Well, kind of. Well, it's funny, yeah, because David Aldridge starts off. Oh, you know this one? Have you heard this one yet? So he outlines the story. LaBradford Smith is a rookie for the Bullets. I think this is '93. He said, and he scores 37 points in a game. As the game of his life. Jordan does not play well in that game. And then as the story goes, he says at the end of it, "Oh, nice game, Mike." And then Mike's mad about it. He's fuming, and then they happen to have a back-to-back, so they're in Washington the next night. And Jordan says, "Oh, I'm going to outscore him in the first half." He comes close. He scores 36 in the first half, something like 46 or 48 in the game, just completely annihilates him. But it turns out years later, Jordan admits that he made up the story. That it wasn't real. LaBradford Smith never said, "Nice game, Mike." So I guess the lesson is that you don't really need to do something to make Jordan mad. Like, it doesn't matter if you do or if you don't. He's going to be mad about it anyway. He's going to make something up to be mad about to motivate him to do that. So that's it's interesting. Of course, it's interesting to it makes you immediately raises suspicions about whether you trust anything that Michael Jordan ever says.
Look,
but,
you're talking to the wrong guy on that, because I take a little, I take pretty much every single thing that Jordan says and kind of think, is that really is that really true? Yeah. So, right. And anybody who knows anything about basketball history or has studied, basketball history, I think would usually take the same approach with anything Michael Jordan says too. So
yes,
he's a man who uses things and makes things up in his mind to motivate himself, which again is fine, whatever. Sure. But yeah, don't take much of what Michael Jordan says at face value, which
yes, which of course we're watching the whole documentary,
which makes it a little tough when you're watching a documentary that he has editorial oversight over. So yeah, it's a little weird, but and that's what I said. I have people that I know that are watching it, and I just said, just understand that Michael Jordan, he's not always the total truthful. So don't take everything that you're seeing here as gospel. Like do your own research, look things up, find out, because and especially this documentary, he has his finger on it. So he's maybe they're not going to say, hey, Jordan says this happened, but that actually didn't happen. That's wrong. They're probably not going to challenge him on stuff like that. So do your own independent research, ask some of your own questions, and think about all that sort of stuff. It's a supremely entertaining documentary, but still understand that the guy at the end of the day who's has the final say is also the star of the documentary. So
sure, absolutely, yeah. I guess we didn't really we should have at least touched on it back in the section in which Jordan's teammates are kind of talking about what a difficult guy is, and Jordan himself he mentions that he was difficult, but he gets very emotional at the idea that not all of his teammates wanted to go out there and win. It's a little bit of a corny moment, frankly, for Jordan. Something that I did not expect him to get emotional about was just
guys not wanting to lift weights with him. Yeah, it's a little
right. Weird. Yeah. It's a little. It's one of the things that doesn't quite ring true to me. I don't know, but Jordan's weird. Jordan's kind of crazy. So I'll and again, with the way that they're editing the story, maybe the in context it makes a little bit more sense than how it fit together in the documentary. But yes, that was kind of a weird one. But anyway, we kind of focused on 95 and 96 here. Jordan, of course, went off to play baseball. Baseball has a strike, so Jordan, he's not going to be a replacement player. So, and it looks like the strike's going to be a while. So he considers, hey, maybe I'll go get back into basketball. He visits one practice, and that turns into a few practices. Starts to get involved with the team. Word gets out that he's practicing with the team. So there's rumors that he might join back. David Falk tells a story about he had like 3 or 4 versions of the famous press release. Jordan doesn't like any of them, so Falk is like, all right, you do it. And then Jordan basically just writes, I'm back. And that's what it famously is. Of course, the 95 team was quite a bit worse than the 94 team had been. They lost Horace Grant to the Magic famously. Reinsdorf did a press conference about how Horace, betrayed the team basically, and which they did not get into that. But that
weird. That's so strange that got cut on the floor. Yeah, darn.
Right. And then Jordan's quote to Bill Wennington is "jump on the cape," as if which is a good one. Jordan talks about they talk about Jordan, being emotional playing for the first time without his dad. He goes with the number 45 as the new beginning. The comeback has its ups and downs, but a couple things that are highlighted, of course, are Jordan hitting a big game winner against the Hawks. And of course, more famously, the double nickel 55-point game at Madison Square Garden that occurred. I think it was like within the first 10 games of his comeback. But the Bulls do reach the Eastern Conference Finals against the Magic, and in a moment that is generally erased from NBA history, the Magic win that series in 6 games.
Semifinals, correct?
Semifinals, yes.
Yeah, just want to make sure because I know people.
Yes, right.
So it's kind of interesting. I mean, the narrative is that Michael Jordan wasn't in playing shape. He wasn't ready to go, and I mean, he scored 31 points that series, so it may have just been that Orlando was really good. That Shaquille O'Neal was 22 years old and really good, and Anthony Hardaway was 22, 23 years old and very good, and Horace Grant was in the prime of his career, and Nick Anderson was in the prime of his career. And Michael Jordan scored 31 points. He shot 47% from the field. I think he was in basketball shape. I think he was good to go. But that's fine if that's what the story they want to tell. But I don't know if I quite buy that story. I think.
I mean, I'm sure, yes, he was not 100% in basketball shape, but he was pretty effective in the series. I mean, the team wasn't that good.
That's really it. Adding Dennis Rodman the next year was huge. It changed the entire complexion of that entire team. It made the team a lot better. It let Tony Kukoc come off the bench, which was a better role for him. Replacing PJ Armstrong with Ron Harper, another huge upgrade at that time too. Or Ron Harper was on a team, but he really became an integral part of the team the next year, whatever. So there's a lot of things that happened to make that 96 team that much better. And Michael Jordan maybe being in tip-top shape and whatnot, but the idea that Michael Jordan was just out of gas and that's the reason Orlando won. I mean, I don't know. It was 31 points.
It was part of it, but it was the whole thing, right? Yeah, and then Jordan, gets the ball stolen in game 1 by Nick Anderson, turns the ball over in the final possession. Nick Anderson says 45 isn't the same as 23, so Jordan does go back to the number 23 in game 2. He has a big game in game 2 that the Bulls do win, I believe. And Jordan says, "Hey, 45 wasn't natural," which I don't know what that means. I don't really know. I find the whole switching the number thing a little weird. Just I guess what difference does it make? But obviously it meant something to Jordan mentally. And then game 6, Jordan, hits an air ball toward the end, and then Nick Anderson himself hits the game winner. You see the Magic put Horace on their shoulders in triumph. Of course, the Magic do go to the finals that year, but lose in a sweep to the Rockets, who, as a lot of people noted on Twitter, are not mentioned once in this documentary.
No, poor Curtis Harris, not getting any love for his Houston Rockets. So.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us are upset about that, of course. But the fact, the I don't know. I do find it sort of interesting that I mean, not that you would have spent a lot of time on it, but no mention at all or nothing about Akeem, in Jordan. It feels like
right. Who was in the same draft? I mean, who was drafted number one in the same draft? Like it seems like you could probably just spend a second on it, but whatever.
Whatever. So. And then we get a little Space Jam, which when there was footage of Space Jam on, my dog growled at the screen for a moment. So,
good boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like Space Jam either, apparently.
Well, good. He's smart. Your dog is smarter than a lot of humans who lie to themselves and think that Space Jam is a good movie. So
yes. And I thought it was cool to see footage of the practices that were being held.
How cool is this? Yeah, this is my favorite part of the entire series so far because I didn't know about it. I did not. I knew that he was training during this time, but I assumed that it was just he went to some high school and put up shots and whatnot. I didn't know they built a goddamn dome for him.
Right.
This is awesome. This is really cool. And there's gym equipment there, and there's this nice court, and then you're seeing these games, and you're like, man, where's the footage of these games? I want to see Juwan Howard and Reggie Miller and Dennis Rodman in plaid shorts, playing at 9 p.m. on the Hollywood set. This was awesome. I love this scene.
Right, that was really cool. Yeah. So 96.
Real quickly, I did find it pretty awesome too that we're giving a critical eye to a lot of what Jordan does, but we're also tipping our cap when he does some good stuff too. And I love the idea of him saying, hey guys, I got this practice facility if you guys want to come out here and play or whatever. It's you idiots, you're getting him in basketball shape and he's scouting you. No, don't go. This guy's dominating the NBA. Let him figure it out on his own. You got all these guys being okay, yeah, we'll go over. We'll play some basketball games with you. You're getting him in shape, you guys. And now he knows all about you. What are you doing? Reggie, what are you doing? Funny. Reggie, get out of there.
Right.
But man, I want footage of those games. Someone's got to have something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they showed a little bit here and there, but yeah, it'd be cool to see more if that happened. But
you had shirts versus skins. You got Juwan Howard as skin just dunking on people. I want that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Juwan looking good, man.
Yeah, it was looking fantastic.
Yeah. So by 96, most of the Bulls, had, other than of course, Pippen and Jordan, had not been there in 93. I think Wennington was on the 93 team as well, but obviously a low number of guys there, a lot of turnover in the roster. Jordan and Kerr tell their sides of getting into a fight in practice. Jordan's mad at Phil Jackson for basically calling cheap foul, what he feels are cheap fouls to kind of protect Kerr. Jordan feels like, if Kerr can't take this, how is he going to help us, against the Knicks or whatever? And they get into a Kerr punches Jordan in the chest, and then Jordan punches Kerr in the eye. Then Jordan says, "Oh, I felt bad about it later. I beat the littlest guy on the court," and he went to, he gets Steve Kerr's number and he calls him and he apologizes to him. And Kerr felt like, okay, well, I kind of stared down Jordan on that one. I didn't just take it. So he kind of respected me from that point forward. And it was good for us to get this out of the way at the time. So I've heard that story before, but it was kind of good to hear kind of from both their points of view.
Yeah. They actually get it from Kerr's point of view as well and not just kind of hearsay. So yeah, it was cool. I think a lot of people were waiting for it to be this super salacious story, and it was just yeah, he punched me, and then we moved on from there. So it's oh, all right, yeah, that's fine.
That was good. Of course, the big addition is Rodman, as we talked about. The Bulls, they run through. We don't get a lot of detail in this season, which is fine.
It was kind of interesting. I'm getting ready for 96, and they're all right, against the Sonics, and I'm whoa, all right,
that's all right, yeah,
that's fine. I mean, I guess when you win 72, there's not a ton to get to, but yeah, they really quickly went over I mean, they spend excruciating amounts of time on a lot of these seasons, and they're just Bulls start 23-2, and then they're facing the Sonics in the finals. I'm okay, well, we're there. But I mean, I guess the playoffs there wasn't too much,
Yeah, they talk about the Magic a little bit. Obviously, they beat him in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right.
We did the episode with Kelly Dwyer talking a lot about it, but Horace is basically we didn't have a chance. They don't get into anything with Penny and Shaq, but again, that's not really the purview here, so that's fine
for sure.
In the finals, Michael Jordan gets mad because George Karl doesn't say hello to him. So, yeah, that's too sad.
Another person that hates George Karl, but for the least reason that anybody's ever hated George Karl. Everybody else hates George Karl because he's a snake and he's an asshole and he's this, and Michael's just you didn't say hi to me.
Well, I think Jordan actually likes George Karl.
Right. Well, it's weird because they're both gigantic assholes.
Right.
So, you were saying yes. You're also saying they went to the same college.
Carolina guys. Yeah. So, the Sonics go down 0-3. The story is that Gary Payton didn't defend Jordan, which I don't think is like 100% true, but definitely he was not the primary defender for him. And, they switched that in game 4. Why it took till game 4 is kind of questionable, but
George Karl.
yeah, a stubborn guy. Yeah, Jordan goes 6 of 19 from the field. The Sonics win, game 4 in a blowout. They win game 5 easily as well. Both of these, of course, are in Seattle. And then you get one of the better, scenes in this documentary is, we've been kind of getting it from Peyton's kind of point of view. It's like, yeah, I really want to tire him out. It's like, I was really mad they didn't call on me until game 4. And I was just like, F it, I'm going to do it. And then, you see Peyton say, oh, yeah, I don't know if it would change the course of it, but definitely took a toll on him. And then you see Jordan watching on an iPad, and he just like busts out laughing at the idea that Peyton, could contain him. And Jordan's like, yeah, I had no problem with the glove. I had no problem with Gary Payton. But you look at the last 3 games of the 96 finals, Jordan, 37% shooting on 20 shots per game, 23.7 points, obviously way below his average, almost 4 turnovers a game, 48.5 true shooting percentage. So, whether it was exactly because, Peyton guarding him or whether he just, tired out a little bit or, whatever, it definitely, he did not play, to his normal standards in those last 3 games of the finals. Didn't really matter. You win, they of course, win it in game 6. It's Father's Day. You see Jordan having, giving a emotional speech afterward. Talking about his family, talking about how he won it for his dad, and then what is just one of the most shocking things I've ever seen is you see Jordan, laid out on the floor, by himself except for a few cameras there. Holding the ball and just weeping, uncontrollably at, afterward, of course, with the emotional, the emotions coming out of him after, what that obviously meant to him, which pretty shocking to see that. Honestly, I that is not something I would want to be seen of me, but obviously really powerful, really emotional stuff, really, incredible part of the story.
Yeah, I thought it was what I found really interesting about that scene is that, other than the cameras that were obviously filming him doing it, and then there was, I think, one other guy there, I forget who it was one of the rare times that you saw Jordan without people around him. There wasn't, 10 people around him. There wasn't, a bunch of cameras around him. There wasn't it was like one of his few moments of being by himself, and one of his few moments of him, being able to kind of be in his own emotions or whatnot. And yeah, you see, it all get let out right there, which was a really good way to end. Well, sort of not officially on this episode, but mostly on this episode, as we had, obviously the cliffhanger with the Indiana Pacers at the end.
Right.
But
yes,
no, I thought it was a really, really good scene to put in there, and I did like the lack of music, that it was just kind of silence, and all you heard was his crying or whatnot. And I thought that really does a good job, I think, of setting up the final 2 episodes of the series. So yeah, really, really, really good stuff there by them.
Yeah, and then as you mentioned, the bit of a teaser for next week. Reggie talks about how he thinks, okay, now I'm gonna retire Michael Jordan. It's gonna happen for me, type thing. So, and obviously it's a tough series, and we're gonna talk about next week. But that's 2 really good episodes. Really great stuff. Even though again they tackled subjects, a lot of stuff that I think we're pretty familiar with and has been told otherwise, but they did a pretty good job of hitting what they needed to on those things, but focusing on less less well-known aspects of those things, or other things that were going on during that time. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. These were, I thought, 2 really, really good episodes. I mean, nothing like groundbreaking or unbelievable, but it felt like the most concise storytelling, I think, in the entire episode, or in the entire series so far, because we're tightening up the window here a little bit. Like you said, we're bouncing between 96 and 98. We're starting to, everything's kind of closing in on itself, and you're seeing the reason why, you start out in 1991 and 1984 basically, to 1998, and keep kind of closing that gap. And as we get closer, and as you kind of said a little bit earlier, we're converging on the same amount of time, and it's starting to make things a little bit more interesting too, because everything that's they're going back and showing you something that happened a year or so ago, but it still has so profound effects on what's going on, in the present as well. So yeah, I'm really liking the way that the storytelling's going. So yeah, I really like these episodes. I thought they were really, really good.
Yeah, it'll be fun to get into 97, 98 next week. I'm I'm assuming we're not going to get. I wonder if we'll get any Wizards at all, or if that will even not, even be brought up, or anything post '98 will be brought up with Jordan. It'll be interesting to see if they dip into that at all. I'm guessing probably not.
Yeah, no interviews with Jerry Stackhouse.
Right,
It's gonna happen. Yeah. Oh, I did real quickly. I want to put in my notes here. Can we talk about how incredible the legalized Kemp sign was?
Oh yes,
that is incredible. I hope that if that's not the thing that comes out of this episode.
Oh yeah,
that people just start using hashtag legalized Kemp. I love it, man. It's great. Yes. How progressive in 1996 as well in Seattle. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's Seattle. They were pretty progressive town at that time. But I love legalized Kemp, man. I don't know why, but why am I just now finding out about that sign? Like, what an incredible. Damn. All my life has been wasted without knowing that legalized Kemp was a thing. That's incredible.
We'll have to get we'll see if we can get a t-shirt.
I'd love to wear a t-shirt that said legalized Kemp. So
there you go.
I guess I could design it, but too lazy.
Yeah.
Someone else will do it. But it's honestly, literally, by the time I wake up, that show will I could sit here and try to design one, but if I just wait 8 hours, somebody else will have already done it, and I can just buy it.
There you go.
So
fair enough. Yes. All right, Rich. Well, anything else to talk about?
Not really. That's it. Yeah, we're down to the nitty gritty here, man. 7, 8, 9, 10. We're done. We're done next week. It's over.
All right.
Now what do we do? Now what do we do with our lives?
Well, we'll figure something out, I'm sure. But yes, fun times. Thanks everyone for checking us out. You can find us at the Step Back at Fansided NBA. You can also find our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also can find us on Twitter and Facebook. Both are at Over and Back NBA. So thanks again.